going to be something like that's what you have training camp for, and that's what you have the preseason games for, is to try different lineups and to try different people, and to give the people that are fighting for roster spots a chance to go out there and compete and perform. Like, I'm not going to go out and play 30 minutes on Saturday. That's just not going to be the case. That's not what it's about. It's, obviously I'm going to go out there and compete as hard as I can, but that's not what we need to do. And
the version they sold to the world was simple. Smile. Stay polite. Take the cheap shots, the hard fouls, the endless criticism, and say nothing. Be grateful. Be quiet. Be marketable. That was the Caitlin Clark they wanted. Talented enough to fill arenas, but silent enough to make everyone else comfortable. That version is gone. Because 2026 Caitlin Clark is different. She has seen the double standards. She has heard every excuse, every dismissal, every attempt to minimize what she brings to the game. And now, instead of shrinking, she is answering with something louder. Her game, her confidence, and a refusal to let others write her story for her. She is not asking for respect anymore. She is demanding it. Every deep three, every no-look assist, every stare down after a tough bucket feels like a message. I belong here, and I'm done pretending I need your permission. The league tried to make her prove herself every single night, and all it did was create a player with an even bigger edge. The quiet rookie everyone talked about has turned into the star everyone has to deal with. And that is what scares people most. Not that Caitlin Clark is good, but that she knows exactly how good she is now.
Yeah, I think a little bit of off the ball stuff. Like, I think mostly on dead balls. Like, I'm the best. I think I'm the best transition player in the league. That's where I thrive. Everybody knows that's my game. So, getting the ball off of rebound or in transition, like, that's probably when I'm going to be the primary ball handler more than anything. And then, getting off the ball a little bit and catching your breath. Like, it is exhausting bringing the ball up 94 feet versus pressure every single time. So we certainly need to find somebody that can handle the ball a little bit and, give me a little bit of a break. And I think Raven and Ty and even other people through camp, Tori's done a great job, and Kels does it a little bit, and even I think our 4s and 5s can do that. You saw AB do that a lot last year when we were really in trouble injury wise. So I think there's a lot of different things that can give us a lot of different looks and just makes us harder to guard more than anything.
For 2 years, that argument has been treated like law. Aya Wilson was the standard. 4 MVPs, 3 championships with the Las Vegas Aces, the face of dominance in the league. When Caitlin Clark arrived, the message from the old guard was clear. Respect greatness, wait your turn, and do not confuse popularity with legacy. And to be fair, on paper they had every reason to say it. Aya had the resume, the rings, the trophies, the reputation built over years of proving herself on the biggest stage. She was not just a star, she was the measuring stick. Every young player entering the league was compared to her, and most of them fell short before the conversation even started. But Caitlin Clark was never a normal rookie. She came into the league with something the WNBA had never fully seen before, an audience that followed her everywhere. Packed arenas, record-breaking TV ratings, sold-out road games, national attention that made every matchup feel like an event. And suddenly, the conversation shifted from who was the best player to who was becoming the biggest force in women's basketball. That is where the tension began. Because for many people, especially longtime supporters of Aya Wilson, it felt like Clark was being handed attention that veterans had spent years fighting to earn. It felt like hype replacing accomplishment, like fame trying to outrank greatness. And that created a divide the league could not escape. On one side, Aya Wilson, the proven champion. On the other, Caitlin Clark, the phenomenon changing the business of the sport. People kept trying to force fans to choose one. Legacy or momentum. Respect the past or bet on the future. MVP or movement. But what made this situation explosive was that Caitlin stayed quiet through all of it. While people debated her, criticized her, targeted her, and questioned whether she deserved the spotlight, she mostly let her game do the talking. Until now. Because when someone spends 2 years being told to stay in their place, eventually they decide to tell the world exactly where that place really is.
This year, they have chosen another undeniable all-time great. Drum roll, please. Time 2025 Athlete of the Year, Columbia, South Carolina's very own Asia Wilson.
Right, from God's country.
Yes.
Yeah. Look at that picture. Well-deserved. The 29-year-old Vegas Aces center was the #1 draft pick in 2018. Since then, she has won 3 WNBA championships, 4 WNBA MVP awards, and 2 Olympic gold medals. And she is coming off a record-setting 2025 season, winning the WNBA championship, the finals, and regular season MVP, the league scoring title, and Defensive Player of the Year, all in the same season.
And that is where everything changed. Because this was never really just about stats. It was never only about points per game, rebounds, assists, or championships. This became a battle over ownership of the league itself. Who defines greatness, who controls the spotlight, and who gets to be called the face of women's basketball. Aya Wilson looked at it from the perspective of someone who built her place brick by brick. Years of dominance. Years of proving herself. Years of carrying the Las Vegas Aces to championships while fighting for attention the league often refused to give its stars. So when the world suddenly shifted toward Caitlin Clark, it did not feel like simple admiration. It felt like the conversation was skipping steps. And Wilson has never been shy about protecting what she believes she earned. Whether it was interviews, subtle comments, or the way the debate kept surfacing around MVP conversations, the message was consistent. Popularity does not equal greatness. Attention does not erase championships. And until someone matches the resume, the crown stays where it is. That is not arrogance. That is the mindset of a champion. But here is where Clark changed the entire equation. Because she was never trying to win the argument with words. She was winning it with impact. Every sold-out arena. Every record TV audience. Every franchise suddenly seeing ticket prices explode when Indiana came to town. Every young fan picking up a basketball because of her. She was not just becoming a star, she was changing the economics of the entire sport. And that created an uncomfortable question nobody wanted to answer honestly. What matters more, being the best player or being the player who changes everything? That question made people furious because there is no clean answer. For some, greatness will always belong to Aya Wilson because banners hang forever. For others, the future belongs to Caitlin Clark because influence at that level cannot be ignored. And now, for the first time, Clark is no longer letting everyone else define that conversation for her. She has stepped forward. She has spoken with the confidence of someone who knows exactly what she represents. Not just a player but a shift. Not just a rookie sensation but a force the league has to reckon with. And once she said it out loud, the silence around this rivalry disappeared forever.
I think mostly on dead balls, like I'm the best. I think I'm the best transition player in the league. That's where I thrive. Everybody knows that's my game. So, getting the ball off of rebound or in transition, like that's probably when I'm going to be the primary ball handler more than anything. And then, getting off the ball.
From day one, the welcome message was not subtle. It was physical. Caitlin Clark did not enter the league like a normal rookie. She arrived with cameras already on her, arenas already sold out, and expectations so massive they would have crushed most players before opening night. She was not just joining the WNBA, she was walking in as the center of its biggest spotlight. And a lot of veterans did not love that. Because for years, players had fought for visibility, respect, and mainstream attention that never fully came. Then suddenly, one rookie arrives and the entire sports world acts like women's basketball has just been discovered. To some, that felt less like celebration and more like erasure. So the response came fast. Hard fouls. Extra contact. Plays that went beyond welcome to the league and started looking personal. Elbows that lingered a little too long. Hits after the whistle. Moments where it felt like the goal was not just to defend her, but to test whether she could survive the pressure. Every game became a statement. Some called it jealousy. Others called it veteran accountability. Some said she needed to earn respect the same way everyone else did. Others argued no rookie in recent memory had been targeted with that kind of intensity. Either way, the message was clear. Hype would not protect her. If Caitlin Clark wanted a place in this league, she was going to have to fight for every inch of it. And what made it bigger was that she rarely complained. She got hit, got up, and kept playing. She let the clips go viral while she kept moving forward. The silence frustrated people because they wanted either outrage or collapse, and she gave them neither. Instead, she kept showing up. And every time she did, the spotlight got brighter. Because the more they tried to test her, the more the audience leaned in. The harder they pushed, the more people watched. What was supposed to humble her started turning her into something even bigger. A player people saw not just as talented, but as someone surviving a system determined to make her prove she belonged. That was the beginning of the divide. Not just Caitlin Clark versus defenders. But Caitlin Clark versus an entire culture that seemed unsure whether to embrace her or break her first.
In WNBA action this weekend, Caitlin Clark was shoved to the ground by Kennedy Carter when Indiana Fever faced off against the Chicago Sky. Caitlin talked about it after the game, but Kennedy had less to say about it. Take a look.
It is what it is, you know. I feel like I'm just at the point where you accept it and don't retaliate. Like, you know, just let them hit you, be what it is. Don't let it get inside your head, and know it's coming. I think at this point, like, I know I'm going to take a couple hard shots a game, and that's what it is. Just stay in the game and stay in what's important.
And that is when silence started to look less like patience and more like strategy. Caitlin Clark was watching everything. She saw the headlines that treated her success like controversy instead of accomplishment. She saw the debates where her numbers were explained away, where her impact on the Indiana Fever was minimized, and where every achievement came with an asterisk attached to it. Rookie of the Year? Some said it was hype. Record attendance? They called it marketability. Her playmaking? Suddenly people wanted to talk about turnovers instead of transformation. It was never enough. She could fill arenas, break viewership records, and completely change the energy around the league, and still the conversation would bend itself to avoid giving her full credit. People praised the moment without wanting to fully praise the player creating it. And fans noticed. They noticed how quickly mistakes were amplified and how slowly success was acknowledged. They noticed how certain veterans were protected while Clark was expected to absorb criticism like part of the job description. They noticed that when she succeeded, the goalposts seemed to move overnight. That kind of treatment creates two choices: frustration or focus. Clark chose focus. She kept speaking carefully. She stayed professional. She gave the safe answers, the team-first answers, the respectful answers. Publicly, she looked calm. But privately, you do not go through 2 straight years of that without keeping score. Because athletes remember. They remember who doubted them, who dismissed them, who smiled in interviews while questioning whether they belonged. They remember every cheap shot disguised as "welcome to the league." And eventually, when the game slows down and the confidence catches up to the pressure, that memory turns into something dangerous. It turns into conviction. By 2026, Caitlin Clark was no longer trying to prove she deserved a seat at the table. She was starting to ask why people kept pretending the table still existed without her.
Yeah, well, I was talking to Steph a little bit, and I'm the person that doesn't want to sit out a single rep. Like, I want to be in there every single time. Like, I just love competing and I love playing, and none of that has changed, but I think just like being a little bit smarter with my body and understanding what it takes. And I think especially like through camp days, like these days are really long. Like, you're on the court 2.5, 3 hours and putting in a lot of stuff. So, you know, taking care of my body at this point in the season is probably the most important thing. You know, whether that's recovery, whether that's pre-court treatment, whatever it is, I think it's those type of things. So, but like I said, I mean, I've never really sat on the sidelines before, so it's a very humbling experience. And
2025 did not test Caitlin Clark with highlights. It tested her with silence. No sold-out comeback moment. No nightly stat lines to shut people up. No easy way to control the conversation. Just rehab rooms, missed games, and the brutal reality that sports move on fast when you are not on the floor. And for someone wired like Clark, that kind of helplessness can be louder than any crowd. Because when you are injured, you are forced to watch. You watch the league keep spinning. You watch debates happen without you in them. You watch people decide what your future looks like while you are still fighting just to get healthy enough to return. And sometimes, the loudest opinions come from people who seem strangely comfortable counting you out. That is where 2025 became dangerous. Not because Clark disappeared, but because she had time. Time to hear every, maybe she peaked too early. Time to hear every, the league has adjusted. Time to hear every subtle attempt to move her from phenomenon to temporary headline. And while the outside world talked, she was learning. Training through pain. Studying the game differently. Understanding not just how to return, but how to return stronger. Injuries can humble players, but they can also sharpen them. They force patience. They force perspective. They force a competitor to decide whether they want sympathy or revenge. Clark has never looked like someone interested in sympathy. She noticed who defended her and who disappeared. She noticed who kept the same energy when she was not filling arenas every night. She noticed how quickly the face of the league conversation shifted the second she was vulnerable. That kind of memory matters. Because great competitors do not forget disrespect. They convert it. Every doubt becomes fuel. Every dismissal becomes motivation. Every moment someone celebrates your setback becomes part of the comeback story. And while people kept talking about who owned the future of women's basketball, Clark was building something far more dangerous than a public argument. She was building receipts. And by the time 2026 arrived, she was not coming back just to play. She was coming back to collect.
Well, I mean, I think, speaking to last year, like, obviously I was in about no reps because I wasn't playing.
Right.
So, you know, it's hard. It's very isolating to come to practice every single day and spend 2 hours getting treatment and rehab. And then, you know, you come out here and you have to show up and be the best teammate you can be. And I think that taught me a lot about what I can do if I'm not on the court. And, you know, I got to be their biggest fan, and I think that was a great experience for me because through a lot of my career, like, everybody else was my biggest fan. And, you know, that doesn't mean I wasn't cheering for my teammates. It was like I was playing the most amount of minutes. I had the ball in my hands, and, you know, when you're not doing that, you have to find another way to impact the team. So, you know, I think I was able to do that and kind of help us and be as involved as I can. And, you know, I traveled to every single game but one just because of some rehab things that I was trying to get done to hopefully come back. But, yeah, I think just communicating really more than anything.
That answer told you everything, if you were really listening. Caitlin Clark was not giving some dramatic headline. She was giving something much more revealing: honesty. She talked about isolation, about showing up every day for treatment instead of competition, about sitting in practice knowing everyone else was preparing to play while she was preparing just to heal. For elite athletes, that is its own kind of pain. The game keeps moving and you are forced to stand still. But what stood out most was not frustration. It was perspective. She said she had to learn how to be the best teammate she could be without stepping on the court. She had to become the biggest fan for everyone else because for most of her life, everyone had been that for her. That is not weakness, that is growth. That is a competitor learning leadership from a place of helplessness instead of control. And that matters. Because critics love to paint Clark as only the spotlight, only the star, only the player with the ball in her hands. But what she described was the exact opposite. She was talking about sacrifice, presence, traveling to every game, staying connected, finding ways to lead when the easiest thing would have been to disappear into frustration. That is maturity. And buried inside that calm answer was something even bigger. She was learning patience. Not just how to recover physically, but how to handle a version of herself that could not dominate with talent alone. She had to contribute with voice, with trust, with support. That kind of lesson changes players permanently. Because when stars learn how to lead without scoring, they usually come back even harder when they can. People heard that quote and focused on the rehab. Smart people heard it and realized something else. This was not someone broken by injury. This was someone being sharpened by it. She was not describing a setback. She was describing preparation.
Caitlin Clark has literally made the league relevant. The amount of money that Caitlin Clark is generating on her own for the WNBA, as you can clearly say, is $1 billion. And that was the year she didn't hardly play. She was hurt most of her sophomore season in 2025. Whenever the Indiana Fever play any other team in the WNBA, the tickets skyrocket. They have to move arenas. Ticket sales go up, merch sales go up. The WNBA has not turned a profit since the league started almost 30 years ago. Quite literally, if it wasn't for the WNBA sucking the dicks off of the owner and the commissioner of the NBA, the WNBA would cease to exist.
And that was the moment people realized the old version of Caitlin Clark was officially gone. Because confidence sounds different when it is earned. This was not arrogance. It was not disrespect toward Aya Wilson or anyone else who built this league before her. Clark was not trying to erase history, she was refusing to be trapped by it. She gave Aya her flowers. She acknowledged the MVPs, the championships, the dominance. She understands exactly what Wilson represents. But respect does not mean surrender. And for the first time, she said that without apology. She made it clear, I know who you are, but I also know who I am. That changes everything. Because for 2 years, people projected humility onto her as if silence meant uncertainty. They assumed that because she stayed composed, because she avoided public drama, because she kept choosing the safe answer, she must still be waiting for permission to step into that top-tier conversation. She was never waiting. She was preparing. Training camp in 2026 was not the arrival of a new Caitlin Clark. It was the reveal of the one that had been forming the entire time, through the hard fouls, the injuries, the criticism, the endless comparisons, and the constant demand to prove herself twice as much for half the credit. Now she was done shrinking herself for other people's comfort. She said she believes she is one of the best players in this league. That statement should not have been controversial. Great athletes are supposed to believe that. You do not survive at that level without it. But because it was Caitlin Clark, because of everything attached to her name, it landed like a thunderclap. Some people called it confidence. Others called it entitlement. But the truth is simpler. It was clarity. She is no longer interested in being the future of the WNBA. She is here to be the present.
This one of the reasons why they hate Caitlyn. Watch her lock them down. Watch her lock her down. Look, come here. I almost blocked it too. She ain't want to embarrass her like that. Look. And see, you supposed to rebound it and pass the ball. Come here. Here's another reason. You hear that? You hear the whole arena. That's another reason why they hate. And I can keep going on and on for more reasons of why they hate, like they not better than her. But you know how hard it's got to be to you play against somebody. You open your phone, you see them. You look at the TV, you see them. Your family members talking about them. Your friends talking about them. The fans, when you go around and people see you or want to take pictures of you, what is it like playing against Caitlyn Clark?
This is where the conversation stops being just about two stars and starts being about how narratives get built around athletes. On the basketball side, there is a straightforward debate. Aya Wilson is a proven champion with MVPs and titles for the Las Vegas Aces. Caitlyn Clark is a newer force whose impact on the Indiana Fever has been historic in terms of attention, attendance, and offensive creation. But once you move past the court, the discussion gets heavier and less clean. Because who is the best in today's WNBA ecosystem is often entangled with everything around the game. Media framing, fan identity, generational change, and how quickly a league can shift when a single player dramatically increases visibility. That is where the tension you are describing comes from. For Clark, the pushback has not just been Aya is better. It has sometimes been your success is overstated, or your impact is media-driven, or you haven't earned equal standing yet. That is a very different argument, and it is why the discourse gets so heated. It turns a basketball comparison into a legitimacy debate. And that is exactly what Clark has started to reject more openly. Not by attacking anyone else's resume and not by dismissing what came before her, but by tightening her own stance. Her production, her influence, and her consistency are not up for negotiation. That matters because elite athletes don't stay in the prove-it phase forever. At some point they stop answering questions like "Do you belong?" and start answering "How do you defend what you've already built?" That is the shift people are reacting to in 2026. It is less about a rivalry between two players, and more about Clark stepping out of the narrative where she is being constantly evaluated through external approval. And whether people agree with her or not, the reality is simple. Once a player reaches this level of attention and performance, the story stops being written by consensus and starts being written on the court night after night.
I think USA basketball was really good for me to kind of get back out there and get my feet under me, and you're playing with the best players in the world, so I don't think there was a better setting for me to kind of just get back into it and be surrounded by really good people. And when you're in that type of competitive setting, first of all, there's no better setting to be in, and second of all, it brings out the best in you. You want to rise to the level of the people around you, and then you also want to beat them, and then you get on the court and get to compete with them as your teammates. So I have a long ways to go to continue to get better, and I think that's the exciting part. This is the beginning of year 3, but like I said, I've only played 60 games, I think it is. I might be a little off there, but and only appeared in 2 playoff games, so I got a ways to go still.
What you are describing is less about a single quote and more about a shift in how a player is perceived once she stops filtering herself for public comfort. When Caitlyn Clark speaks directly and without hesitation, it changes the emotional temperature around her. Not because the facts suddenly changed, but because the tone did. Fans respond strongly to that kind of clarity, especially when they have spent years feeling like a player is being debated more than she is being appreciated. That reaction you are describing on social media, "Finally, this is what we needed," comes from a long build-up. For a large portion of her audience, Clark has represented more than just a star player for the Indiana Fever. She has become a symbol in broader arguments about recognition, coverage, and fairness in women's basketball. So when her tone becomes more assertive, supporters interpret it as validation of what they already felt. But there is another layer worth keeping in mind. A player speaking up is not automatically a change in reality, it is a change in visibility of their mindset. Clark's game, her impact, and her value were already there in 2024 and 2025. What is changing in 2026 based on what you are framing is how openly she is willing to define herself instead of letting others define her. That distinction matters. Because elite athletes don't actually become different players overnight just because their tone changes. What changes is narrative control. Before she was described, now she's describing herself. And that always creates split reactions. Supporters hear confidence and justice. Critics hear ego or reframing of expectations. Neutral observers see a maturing star stepping into full ownership of her image. The interesting part is that none of those reactions change what happens on the floor. If anything, it increases pressure on both sides of the debate, because now every performance is interpreted through the lens of that statement. So what you are really pointing at is this: 2026 Clark is not just playing under scrutiny anymore. She is actively participating in shaping the scrutiny. And that is where great athletes eventually end up, whether people agree with their tone or not.